What's your famous movie soundtrack?
What's the what?
What's your famous?
Oh, the
movie?
most famous that we worked on?
Yeah.
Lion King, probably.
Yeah.
And another one was Speed was big.
What did you do for Lion King?
I orchestrated most of the cues. And I arranged some of the vocal stuff on the songs. The choir. Not the lead singing, but just the choir. But mostly it was the orchestra, the background, just orchestrating.
And then the next name, Igor Stravinsky.
Yeah, well, he's probably the most definitive composer in this century, I'd say. I'd say he's probably the strongest, most well-rounded influence, I think, on all of us, really, because his harmonic thing. But on the other hand, there are a lot of influential guys, like all the other avant-garde composers of Bartok, but also Prokofiev is great, and he had a strong influence on the movie business. He liked doing movies, didn't hold him back. Got a lot of freedom in that, if you can just convince the director. That's the biggest job.
I picked out Igor Stravinsky because Ernst Count has something to do with Stravinsky, I think.
Oh yeah, he had
Soldier's Tale or something like that. Those compositions.
Well, that's right. His rhythm thing, it's kind of an ethnic thing, but it's very similar to the American Indians. That's why I did that piece, because it just seemed like they came from the same place. And I'm sure that the ancient Russian people had a very similar kind of music to the American Indians as well, just as they do in Japan and really probably everywhere. And it's very rhythmic, and it has accents that occur in kind of different places that you would normally expect. Although Stravinsky formalized it, and he took it to a really advanced intellectual spot, and that's why but it still kept its raw energy. That's the beauty of the Ride of Spring, is that it keeps that. It's sort of a perfect piece.
And for me, it's like rock and roll, hypnotic and absorbing, really.
I'm sure that's why they didn't like it. They thought it was too brash and animalistic and not refined and Mozart enough, like, the intellectual, the humans they got to the point where they even had to wear a wig, they couldn't even have their own hair sticking out. So, I like the natural way much better, and I'm sure that's Stravinsky's thing, although he became more and more intellectual in later life. He lived here too. So did Schoenberg. He was here too in later life. And so I think I'm strongly influenced by those modern classical composers, and even more modern ones. Like I had a teacher named Yusachevsky, who was from Russia. He taught at
electronic composer.
At Columbia Princeton, and then his guys, Milton Babbitt and these guys, Harvey Solberger, the flute player, Charlie Warrenen, he's a composer of that kind of nature, and sort of a electronic music mixed with incredible technical modern classical music that's very much like Frank, actually.
How do you like Giorgi Ligeti?
He's good. He was here, I think, wasn't he? For a while? Taught at UCLA, I think.
Okay.
And I like the Polish composers.
Polish?
Ludoslavsky and Penderecki and those guys. I wrote a piece about. I was really strongly influenced by Penderecki's Capriccio for violin and orchestra. That's even more than his Hiroshima, Serenity for the Victims of Hiroshima. Yeah, this was, I wrote a paper, I studied him when I was in college, because Yuzachevsky was fabulous, and he used to run around and play around with tape machines all the time and cut little tiny pieces of tape. Totally different kind of music than jazz, but a nice opposite to jazz. Is that a DAT?
No. It's normal professional, so that's recorded. How would you describe your classical influences on Ask and Count? Or European chamber jazz influences or something?
Well, I think European chamber jazz has a lot of classical influence. It's not swinging particularly, you know. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not like bassy, you know. To me, bassy and Ellington, they're kind of the epitome of just, you sort of jump on this train that's going by, and it carries you along with the rhythm, and whatever notes you play are automatically right. Those guys could get into that frame of mind, which is not easy. You've really got to be relaxed. I think as soon as you get more and more intellectual about it, and think of things, this would be real neat, and think of it maybe more mathematically rather than emotionally. I like that a lot, but it's definitely different. And it might be sort of harder for the average audience to understand, you might say. But I really feel like that modern classical music and real modern jazz sort of come together a little bit at a certain point, and they get closer to each other than farther apart. So I found that I could, especially after playing with Frank, because he sort of leads you to a classical way of improvising. Like say Ruth was in the band, right?
Yeah.
Ruth's not really an improviser, but every once in a while you could point at her, she'd play something, but it wouldn't be jazz. It would come from all her training and be more of a classical kind of improvisation. That's not really to say that I don't think European jazz swings or anything, because it certainly has European jazz has just as much variety as anything, as world jazz. Just there's all different kinds, in other words. But I like the concept of having a small group, a really small, intimate group with 2 or 3 guys, so that each guy can really listen. And this is something that actually Vinny Golia was saying. I went to a lecture he gave on this tour. He said the optimum number of guys to improvise for free improvisation, totally free, is 3. You know, when you get more than that, then, I mean, if it's 2, it's not as quite as much influence. But with 3, sort of a perfect number. I thought that was a really good statement. So I think having a group with 3 members, or just having part of a record, like on Ask and Count, is a collection of a lot of different things.
And Ask and Count is, in my opinion, it's at the same time it's abstract, intimate, and raw. So these concepts goes together in a way, and that's wonderful. I mean,
well, that record has like solo piece number 5. Oh, that's One Man, One Bone. It's called on there. That piece is all written except for the middle part where there's a cadenza kind of a thing. All the rest of it's just written.
yeah.
But that's, so what? It's like, could have written down anything.
And the next name, Miles Davis.
Oh, Miles, yeah. Well, in the 60s, when they got to kind of I thought it was sort of the apex of their career, really, when they had, when he had George Coleman in the band, and it was...
Before Pitches Brew, or...
Yeah, before that, it was he really had a super strong influence on me. After that, I kind of started liking Jimi Hendrix a lot. But before that, when Miles did it was kind of it's a real swing in jazz, but it's so open sounding. With Tony Williams and those guys, that was really, really great. Perfect music.